Let's talk about the REST architecture. So why the first question is coming web services. As we know that web services, why it is important in the industry and what kind of services and what kind of benefits we are getting with the REST services. I mean web services, which is basically of two types, as you know, SOAP based and REST based. SOAP is simple access object protocol, and that last term protocol makes this complex, and when it is a protocol there's a lots of guidelines and the rules associated with that. So whenever you are trying to use SOAP, you have to follow the lots of guidelines, where REST is one of the representational state transfer. It's not a protocol, it is just a what I can say mechanism by which you can tune your application in such a way that people who is looking for what you are going to communicate with that. And the main part of REST architecture is the HTTP protocol. Whereas in the SOAP based, we have a WSTL file, which stands for Web Services Descriptor Language, and it is a XML file basically, where service provider and is going to give you the complete details how to consume their REST services. I mean web services. So going forward, whatever application we are developing now this day, not a single application going to use the SOAP-based web services, because it is lengthy and difficult to maintain. Applications are coming now to become XML free kinds of things, and that's what the Spring Boot is also one of the examples where we are talking. We don't have any set of configurations related to XML. Internally, it is having doesn't matter, but yeah, high level as a infra setup kinds of things, you don't need to do these kinds of things, XML based configuration. Now, so why REST is popular? I told you because of their simplicity. So now this day, whatever application we are developing, it is making sure that it is a REST based application. In fact, you are developing a simple application which is having a simple UI support and having the backend support. People used to prefer having the two services differently running, one for backend and one for front end. Right now, whatever application is using SOAP, people are start considering those applications as a legacy application. So, and the idea is coming out from those legacy applications. So there is a many complexity when you talk about XML. Whenever it is a XML, you have to introduce the parser, and parser is always a what I can say costly operation. Well, so now it's not only that like REST is simple, rather than it is exploring and giving you the mechanism by which you can expand your business. When I say expand your business, let's talk about one scenario. So you got a project for developing a online movie ticket booking. You started developing the whole project, and you submitted to your client, and later you realize that the same client is looking for online bus ticket booking. You again started and start doing all these things stuff. Finally you submitted this, but when you analyze from the micro level, you found that almost 80% of the code which you have written in the online booking movie ticket booking, same code you have been using for almost in the online bus ticket booking. So here is the alarms, and people start thinking, why can't we write services, that service layer, in such a way that we can use it? And there the REST API is becomes very popular, and people are getting a lots of advantages from there. So you are writing always a backend in such a way that it is generic enough, and it is serving you like a framework. So you are saying this application is for online ticket booking, irrespective of it is a movie ticket or a bus ticket or the train ticket or whatever it is. And there the communication is going to be taken place easily with the different services with the help of REST API. Why? Because at the end, the flow is not going to be changed. The almost formats are going to be same, or it is going to be XML or JSON. That's the matter. People now this again 90% application is using the JSON format data, and you know the advantage of that, because Our browser is smart enough to read that and parse those XML data. So idea is pretty simple. REST is going to give you the endpoints which you can hit by HTTP protocol. Get what you are looking for. The only thing you have to change is your backend database and how the endpoints. That's all. The remaining things are going to be same. In fact, endpoints also you can write generic enough. Well, so in REST high level, we have a 4 types of method, and those methods are get, post, delete, and put. On the top of that, we also have something called batch. We also have head, but those are just not involved in the main operations of REST API, whether it is supporting methods. So any application, if you talk, it is having the CRUD operation supported. And when it is a CRUD supported, then make sure that your that application is right candidate of REST API. Now, get is pretty simple. So you have a set of data, which is a kinds of read-only data, and you want to display that. So like employee table data, you have employee grid. You want to display the all data of employee table, then yes, you have to make a call called get. In fact, you remember in the previous application, whenever we are having the servlet and GSP, there we have only 2 kinds of method, which was like get and post. Get is smaller in size, post is bigger in size. Whenever you want to read data from server, you are using the get. Whenever you want to write data into the server, you are using the post. And high level, the size of post method is bigger than get. That's what we have learned from the servlet GSP methods. But here we are adding the complete CRUD related operations, which is coming under the banner of REST API. Now, under these 4 methods, it is pretty simple. For creating, you are going to use post. For deleting, it's a delete. For updating, you are using the put method. There is one more term which came along with this method called idempotent method. So I don't know whether you have heard it or not, but in a world of REST API or in the interview of REST API, people used to ask this question: what is idempotent method? So idempotent methods are those methods which is making a impact on your database or in your actual data store. For example, if you call get method plenty of times, it's not going to make any impact on the data because it's a read operation. So even though people are keep on calling this get method endpoints, it is keep on hitting the endpoints of get method. It is completely safer. It's not going to make any impact. But think about the post method. So post method are something. If you keep on calling the methods or hitting the endpoints of post, every time it is going to impact your data. It is keep on adding a new record into your particular table. So this is not a idempotent method. Think about delete in the same way. You're passing a set of, you're passing an ID or it could be a all. What you're going to do, you are going to delete that record. So first time it is making an impact. And after that, if you keep on calling the same delete method, there is nothing happening because the specific ID which you want to delete already deleted in the first attempt. And next time it is not making any impact. Similarly for put, if you want to update some set of data based upon some ID or something. So there also the first time data has been updated. Next time the same data is going to be updated. But at the end, your data is not going to be corrupted and it is not going to be invalid or it is not creating any business problem. So get is the idempotent method. Post delete, get, delete, and put is a idempotent method, but post is not a idempotent method. In another way, if you want to categorize these methods, it will be also read and write methods. So get is the only read method. Other than get, all these 3 methods are write method, which is actually writing the data. And that's what the discussion is coming whenever you are doing with the get, post, delete, put, which is thread safe. where you need concurrency kinds of things. That all things has been taken care internally by the REST API providers, applications like Spring Boot and all. Think about that. Java has come up with the idea of concurrent hash map in the concurrency framework. So they found that if yeah,
Got confused. Idempotent. Can you please repeat in high level once? I was
uh,
confused.
your voice is breaking. I didn't get you.
Idempotent, I actually didn't get. Could you please repeat once again?
Yeah.
Idempotent.
Idempotent methods are those methods which is making a impact on your data. So think about these four methods. If you keep on calling the endpoints of get method, get employee, do you see any impact is happening on the database? No. It is every time bringing you the same set of data which you are looking for. But what about post? If you keep on hitting the endpoint of post method, every time it is creating a new records. Are you getting my point?
So post delete or create will be called as idempotent.
No, in fact, delete also not. Think about delete. I'm asking you to delete the employee ID one. If you keep on hitting the delete method n number of time, what will be? Nothing, right? One time your data is deleted. After that, there is no impact, even though you are keep on hitting this delete method. It's a safe to call.
Right. Yeah.
Similarly,
Right.
think
Right.
about the
Yeah.
put. One time it will be making impact that you want actually, but accidentally, if you keep on hitting the put method, there is no problem at all. So it is again safer. So whichever method is safer to hit again
But
and again. Hmm, yeah.
when coming to put, I think we do an update. Suppose where I'll write a condition with a where clause. So
Hmm.
every time where clause will be succeeded, and database will be updated whether the value which we are trying to update is already updated or not. It doesn't matter, right? So it will always be executing, right?
It will be always
To put
executing,
in the put.
but what will be the impact? Do you see any extra impact like data is going to be corrupted? Data is going to be
Right.
added
Okay.
additionally? No, right? The database operation is costly. I agree with you. It is writing a query and doing the lots of stuffs. But idea is whether it is safe to call or not. It is safer to call or not. And get, delete, put is completely
Okay.
safer if you hit the endpoints again and again. But post is not safer because every time it is generating a new record, and that could be incorrect data. People start getting the same records with the same numbers, same value. That caused the
Right.
business error. Are you getting my point?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's move ahead. So web service is a collection of open protocols and standard used for exchanging data between application or system. So as I told you, protocols, when it's talk about, it is SOAP, and standards, then it is mainly of REST API. And of course, we are exchanging the data from one application to another application or one system to another system. We also talked about it could be that the one application is a different programming language development and another one application is developing different programming language, but there's the rest. I mean, web services is playing a role actually to communicate, to establish a communication between the two applications, which is a cross programming language or inter programming language. So these are the high level concepts, and remember this is always endpoints, and there is some set of a specification when you are developing a RESTful web services. So here is some examples. So let's say in this you can see that I have composed the URI. So my root application is user service. Then we are having users. Then we have a add users. Then we have a get users. Get users itself is going to get some ID. If you not give ID, then all users will be coming. So like this way, there is a some set of methods. So these endpoints is kinds of, I can say, old way people used to do a lot when they are developing the RESTful web services beginning. But since now we have a lots of annotations coming, which is just going to check that whether this call is a get, post, put, delete, and based upon their internal intelligence, it is going to make sure that the endpoints is not going to be impacted. So the latest trend and latest specification, I can say, do not change your endpoints. But some people wants the proper naming convention. So if you see there, this part advantages, the advantages is like uh, it's very clear for the users. They can easily understand what exactly the this endpoints is doing. So if you say add user, people can easily understand, okay, this endpoints is for adding users. But at the same time, user have to pass the methods along with that, and they are also having some set of mechanism internally written to verify these methods are coming from post, then this is the methods, something like that. But as a application developer, we are most bothering about that, how simplicity is there, how much responsibility a framework can take to make our development life easy. So I'm not saying that which is good, which is bad. It's a business requirement, but since Spring Boot is not supporting the annotations for get, post, put, delete, so whatever applications guidelines we are having right now from different higher level architecture in any projects, whatever I have experienced, people preferred writing a same endpoints, changing their methods. So this is one of the way of that. So that's all I want to talk about RESTful web services. And here's the Spring Boot coming in picture to make your life when you are developing a RESTful application very easy. And how it's gonna be do, let's see with some sample examples. So the first examples I'm gonna show you the high level RESTful applications developed in Spring Boot. Later, I will be moving into the complete high. Hello.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah, please.
So you're saying that you don't have put post create annotations in Spring Boot, right? But I remember in earlier classes you said like there was a new feature, and with the new feature we have these tags also, right?
I think I didn't say that. I told now Spring Boot is supporting the get map, put, delete kinds of separate annotation. So maintaining a same endpoints is same. I mean, good. That's what I told. I don't know. Yeah, I saw you that we have now annotation supported for all these methods. So in fact, you don't need to pass these methods and also. Are you able to hear me properly, Hemant? My voice is clear to you?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay, then there is some sort of miscommunication happen. I'm telling you, like, we have now these kinds of annotation. Look at this. So this get mapping is
Right. Yeah,
completely
this one.
equivalent to the, where are we? Yes, this is completely equivalent to, oh, this is the product. Where is,
Request method, the method
yeah,
what
I'm
you got
looking
put.
for, yeah, I'm looking for one method. Okay, so this gonna be equivalent to this annotation. So there
Right. Yeah,
you
I
are
remember seeing.
removing, and this gonna be the, so either use this one or use this one. This is the old way. Now request mapping is still available, but the development is kinds of old. So now instead of writing method equal to request method get all these things, you don't want to do this. So you completely want to skip this part. And there is some more advantages if you're using this get mapping. So either use this way, which is generic enough and the old trend, but now people preferred using this get mapping directly. So here the advantage we are getting is we are not specifying the methods. This annotation itself is saying that I'm a get method call. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So in the same way, with like get mapping, request mapping,
For similarly for
we have.
post, we have at the rate of post. I will show you in the upcoming
Hmm.
examples. Can you see that? That's a post. Similarly, we have a
Yeah.
put. Similarly, we have a delete.
Uh,
Can you see that? Delete mapping. So we have all these four methods available. In fact,
okay.
all the methods of REST API. Okay, so let's try understanding this part first. then I will be going to the more deeper where I will integrating the database, all these things. But this application is kinds of in-memory repository I have created. So first and most things, as you know, that people are looking for now this day, the ORM module based application, where we are not writing a query. We want to make our application independent of database. So in legacy application, we were having the JDBC API, which is helping us to communicate from Java application to the database. But JDBC is having their own disadvantage, and because of that, people start moving to the new framework called ORM-based framework, where JPA is one of the specification again, and Hibernate framework is the implementation of that. And currently in the industry, uh, I can see that most of the companies are using the Hibernate framework as their backend development. Now, the problem with the JDBC is their database dependency. So when I say database dependencies, then whatever query you are writing, JDBC is not smart enough and intelligence to write the query for you. So it is just saying, you give me the query and I will be executing that query into the database. So there the problems come, because we know that every database is having their own way of writing their procedures, functions, and some set of joins, etc. And if you are using the query, then you are making sure that this is Oracle, then this query is only executing in the Oracle. And when your client is saying, no, I want to purchase your product, but the problem is I cannot go with Oracle. My backend engine is a SQL server. So if you can run your application in my SQL server, I'm ready to take your product. So there the problems comes, and people start migrating and keep on maintaining the DBA script for PL/SQL. I mean, Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, DB2, Sybase, and this is really difficult. So this was the main problem I can say while people start moving from JDBC to Hibernate kinds of framework. So Hibernate is simply saying to you, instead of writing a query, just tell me what will be your table and what are the columns you are looking for. And this is the POJO class in the term of JPA or Hibernate. So you have to create a POJO class, which stands for plain old Java object. I'm going sometimes very basic, trust me, because this is what my standard is. I know that you are an experienced guy, so these terms are just formalities to you. But I always keep in mind, if I speak something, maybe you will get some sort of understanding or some additional concept, some additional learning. So this is the standard I always prefer. Don't mind if you feel bored
Yeah.
sometime.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Yeah. So as you know that, so this is the ORM. So we have created one product class which is currently having the ID and name along with the setters and getters. So this class is going to be a POJO class when I will integrating this to a database. But currently in this simple example, I want to show you the small flavor of RESTful API development in a Spring Boot. So if I talk about the real-time projects, they have their own way of defining their classes, layers, all these things. But here, everything's I have did in the controller. So what I'm doing, I have created one map, which is a static map globally declared in the class. And we have a static block, which is creating a two product of this class, actually two, and putting into this map. So consider this is the repository I have. Sometimes it is also known as in-memory repository. And while starting this class itself, while loading this class itself, this static block is going to execute, and we have a two product already available in the product repo. Now, so after that, we have developed these four methods of REST API. Let's get started from the last, where I'm saying get product. So if you look at this get product method, it is having some set of annotation called path variable. Again, these all things are coming from the Spring MVC. There is nothing like everything is from the Spring Boot. So path variable, it is expecting you have to pass some sort of ID, and this is called binding. So this annotation is a kind of binding operator. So whatever value you are passing from the UI or from the postman, this guy is going to take that ID and assigning to this ID. And pretty simple, we are asking to this repository, hey, give me the object of this ID. And once it is returning to me, then with the help of response entity, which is again provided by the Spring Boot library, Spring Framework library basically, which is taking your product object and sending the HTTP status. Now, again, some sort of discussion around this. Whenever your client is making a call to you, the idea is how simplicity you are providing with that response. Doesn't matter it is a success or it is a fail. If it's some sort of exceptions come, let's say you have got some exception. So you have to be write a REST API in such a way that your user is going to get the proper response of failure also. So there the most of the people are using the AOP framework to binding their failure situations and giving the proper reason to their client or their consumers what went wrong. But here, just what I'm doing, I got a response, assuming yes, I have a response with me, and then after binding this to a response entity. Response entity is one of the library, which is basically converting the whole data in some sort of JSON format. You don't need to do lots of configurations and coding for converting those things. And Spring Boot is again providing one sort of enum, which is a HTTP status holding the different status code. So whoever is a consumer, they understand the meaning of each HTTP status code value. So when I say, okay, it is a 200 and 200 is widely used from the beginning. You remember the Ajax call and all these things. People used to send the 201 and all. But as we are in the REST API, which is a next generation of the development of applications, there we have a lots of status code. So if you go there and you can see that what are the different code and what are the status. So when you run this, it is going to automatically convert it into the particular code. So OK means 200 code. If you are created, then it is a 201. Similarly, you can see that there are list of bunch of code here which is standard in the REST API. But to be very frank, people, I never seen people are using the proper code. The widely used one is the 201. Then after 200 and 403. These are the three I have noticed very frequently people are using. But yes, it is always good if you are studying about this status code and sending the proper status code to make sense. So these are the different status code where I talked about 403. So 403 is kinds of unauthorized. Yeah, so 403. Yes, this is for Villain, which is saying you are not authorized to get these things. Well, so in these examples,
In Java or Spring framework?
no, it is not in Java. It is again a Spring Framework library.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, get the ID, hit the repository, and then after whatever result you are getting, bind with this response entity, and we are sending this response entity back to the consumers along with the status code. Similarly, now we have one annotation called request mapping. This guy is asking you what is your endpoints. So give me the endpoints, and then after what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify the methods also. This request mapping is common for every methods type. The only thing differentiating this request mapping is the method equal to what method you are giving. So if you look at here, we have again all sort of methods: get, post, put, delete, along with the all REST supported methods like head, options, patch, trash, all these things. Yeah, so I've given the get. Now, Lattice framework, which is a Spring Boot, Lattice is providing you the, not again boot, I can say it is a Spring MVC part, which is providing you the direct annotation for the methods type of REST. So if it is a get, use get mapping. If it is a post, use post mapping, all these things. Here, you just need to give your endpoints. You're not going to give the complete method type, because this annotation itself makes sense to you what is this endpoint is for. So similarly, if you talk about request mapping for the post, so in the case of post, what we are expecting, user have to send the predefined object for me in the format of JSON or whatever it is based upon your implementation. And again, old ways that get the all data request dot get parameter name, get parameter email, all these things, and then again create your product object, again call the setters method, again feed this value to there. But now the situation is changed. You have another methods called request body. So just like at the rate of path variable, we have a request body. So whenever we are talking about post method, it is always having a body part, you know. So whatever body part is coming, it's supposed to be in the proper format of your specification of your model class. So this model class is having ID name. So we are expecting somebody is going to prepare the JSON object in the format of my product class object. So if syntactically it is matched, the values are matched, the property names are matched, then this request body is directly going to bind the value of your upcoming data to this product class. You don't need to do lots of setters methods call to prepare this model object. So again, this is the beauty. Now, since it is a put call, so it is going to create a one product to me. And what I'm doing basically, if you noticed here also, while putting the data into my repository, I'm using the ID of that product as a key and whole product as a value. So similarly, I'm fetching the ID from this, and then after I'm pushing into this put method. Now, since it is a put method, so we user must be expecting some value, some messages. Ideally, people are not preferred sending the messages, but let's say if you want to send some sort of messages, you can give these messages. Product is created successfully, but important is this status code, which is 2 not 1, especially for created. So the moment your record is going to be created, it is going to be 2 not 1. And now you can easily make sense about the put also. So in the case of put, you are not only passing the product body, also you are passing the ID for which object you want to update this value. So similarly here also what I'm doing, I'm calling the put method and uh, passing the same object as a part of hash map. You know, if key are duplicate, it is going to replace the existing value. And here also I'm saying for no, I mean 200, which means it is success. I really don't know what is the for updated. There might be some another code for this, but okay is fine. If you don't found any suitable one, then okay is completely fine to go. Similarly for this, let me see, is there any deleted? I didn't found any deleted is there. So that's the reason I have again given okay. So and in the delete, what I'm doing basically, I'm calling the remove method, passing the ID, and this guy is going to delete from there. So this is the some sort of operations we are doing under this controller. But trust me, this is a very ugly code. This is not the right code. I'm breaking a lots of principles here. Like one principle I'm breaking is a single responsibility principle. So this is completely bad. But yeah, for starting, I think we can start with these examples to understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this application by a demo application, which is pretty simple. And if you look at my resource.application.properties file, which is again having just a server port change, because I have a doubt 8080 might be busy. So without any delay, I'm going to start this application, run as Java application. And as a part of Spring Boot, you know that internally Tomcat will be starting based upon the port which you have given. So let's try opening the Postman. So to test our RESTful web services, the tool which is widely used in the industry is Postman. And this is the way how the UI developer is going to be independently working from the backend developer. But the initial days, people are waiting for these all things. But REST API developers, REST API tester is not going to bother whether the UI is ready or not. Because it might be that this application is going to serve many UI. So what I can do is, here is the method option. If you are familiar with the Postman, then you can easily understand it. But still, if you want to make a get call, then change this method name. Put your local host colon whatever port you have, and then after whatever endpoints you have composed here. So what is my endpoints? My endpoints is starting from products. So what I will do, simply I will give products. So I'm passing a get method. So automatically our REST controller will understand this is for the at the rate of get mapping or request mapping with get method. So if I click on send, I'm expecting two objects have to come to me in a JSON format, which is ID name. And that's completely fine, because while starting this application, under the static initialization block, I have given this product creation part. Now, not only that, I want to get only one. So what I will do, I will just pass the ID one. So here you're gonna get only the object which is fulfilling this condition called ID equal to one. And I shown you the internal logic, which is very simple. Now, not only that, let's say I want to create. So when you are creating a record, then you first thing you have to change is the method type, which is now post. We don't need to do any ID and all. Endpoints are going to be same. Go to body side and change it to JSON and prepare your object something like this. Make sure that this name you should not change. So I'm going to C3 here, and this product is going to be oil. Okay. So the moment, one more thing you must have noticed here, the status code is coming here 200, which is in the case of get method. So the same status code is going to be changed now to 201 once I click on send, and I'm expecting that the messages which our post method is sending, which is coming here also, product is created, but the consumer is mainly interested in this code. So since it is a created, it means it is going to give you the status code as a 2, not 1. It is also giving you how much time it has taken to process this. So if I change again to the get method with the same endpoints, I can expect the, oh, I didn't change the ID, it seems. Hold on. Yeah, it should be 3, I guess. So almond, and go to now get, hit this URL, you have the 3. Similarly, if you want to use the put, so under put, again, you have to pass the ID and body also, because you are going to pass the some sort of name. I think ID, if you not give also, it's fine, because it's going to fetch from here. And this gonna be like groceries. Click on send. You have a 200 product is updated successfully. And if you change again to get, remove this. So the first ID has changed to the grocery. Similarly, the last method is delete, where if you want to give ID, give that and click on delete. Product deleted successfully, and verify with this call. It is going to be a 2-3 only. So this is the small introduction about the RESTful API application development in Spring Boot. Do you have any questions, Hemant?
Yeah, one question. So now that we're using Postman and changing the methods from get, put, to delete, right?
Uh-huh.
So usually in a web application, how do we use it? It's like based on the it will be available in the library, same like how we do. Like if we use, if suppose you are consuming this in a
Mhm.
Angular or React application, then we'll use get method, or
Yes,
how it.
yes, exactly. So don't worry.
You are
I have one
right.
application which I'm gonna show you at the end, where I have a UI developed in the Angular and the backend developed in Spring Boot. There I will show you the UI guys also have to provide this information, because your service provider is he have to know that what is this call for, and based upon that he have to take action. So as a part of REST API development, the REST API provider is always providing the some sort of documentation. So this is mandatory. So you are developing a RESTful web services, you have to provide some sort of documentation with your endpoints, with the explanation, with the methods type, all these things. So definitely your UI guys have to provide this information, how he is consuming that. For your sake of clarity, I will just want to show you so that you will be having that clarity how this flow is working basically. So hold on. This is my employee management. So let's say employee. This is the employee one. And if you look at the, I think not this router might be there somewhere. HTTP client service, which is hitting the URL, and look at this. Can you see that? This guy is calling the HTTP client get method. This guy is using the delete method. This is post. This is put. So yes, this guy is also providing the information.
Basically, the libraries which we use for consuming the REST service will have to provide.
Right, exactly. This is also one of the client for the RESTful web services application. Postman is also one of the clients. So if it is a client call, then he have to pass the all required information to make the backend understand what is this call is all about.
Okay. So in normal Java applications, do you know any which client is popular to use for REST consuming REST services? I know one is Jackson.
Jackson is one. Jersey is also there.
Jersey. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So any new APIs have come to consume this?
I think people
like
start thinking on that area because Spring Boot is widely spreaded, So if somebody is developing, they want to look for the audience, I mean consumers of that, right? So now people are start coming from those kinds of standalone Java application API. So why they can put effort if there is no business? So I don't have any information whether the latest any RESTful web services kinds of library is coming or not, or people are working or not. But yeah, instead the people start thinking to overcome on the Spring Boot kinds of on the Java. So have you heard about the Go language? There's a very popular Go language came, and it is taking popularity because of the REST API kinds of things. So it is especially for REST API. Java is run meant for REST API, but the Go language, if you explore, if you get some time, please have a look of the high level overview. What is Go all about? This language is taking a good place, especially for REST API development. So if you go to the Go language tutorial,
this also is an open source now new.
I
New
need to look
language.
into. I think it is, but need to look into that. So this is making your life much easy in a case of REST API development. So I think key values map provides Bhimka. It is a Google product, it seems. So yes, it is open source. Looks like.
Okay.
Yeah. So program structure, if you see. So yeah, there's something you explore it, but as per my understanding, this is completely for making your REST API development much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions, Hemant?
But for, coming to Spring libraries, they are only for Java, right?
Yes, Spring is tightly coupled with Java programming language.
Okay.
And when you say Java, it is you're gonna get everything, right? So now this day, if complete, reactive programming, all these things are whatever latest trend or latest concepts are there. Java people are smart enough to capture those. So one time looks like the Java people are going out from the market because of trend in the functional programming. People start thinking about functional programming and look at the Lambda now. So the Lambda came now, people start exploring that. So now we have a latest version of Java, which is 15. I never got a
Right.
chance to even look into the Java 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. But trust me, they are more competitive. You have a lots of options, lots of
I
beautiful features added.
in 15 they have this HTTP REST consume classes
Yes.
also there.
Yeah, definitely. They are keep on adding the new features. In fact, Java 9 I got a chance to explore once because of their module features. So this module is helping and solving the lots of problems of the business. So if you are in Java, I think uh, until your retirement, you don't need to look some alternative. Okay, so great. Any more question?
No, I'm good.
Super. So let's move ahead with some sort of different examples in REST API. But before that, I just want to show you. I talked about this. You are developing a RESTful controller or RESTful API. It's your responsibility to release a documentation for your consumer. And developing a documentation is now very tedious job. Trust me. People don't want to do that. This is a non-technical requirement. And this part is going to be done by the developer only. So because of this problem, we have a very beautiful library which is telling you, hey, do not write your documentation. I will be taking care of the documentation writing. You must be wondering how. Yes, we have one library in a Spring Boot called Swagger. Have you heard about it before?
I heard about it. I heard the name.
Yes, correct. So I will show you the one demonstration with REST API, how Swagger is helping you to giving the sort of information to your consumer to understand what is this call is all about, what are the parameters they have to pass, what is the syntax, what is the expected modal object, all these things they are going to get it with the help of Swagger. So in upcoming examples, I will be showing you the Swagger example as well. Okay. With that, let's move ahead. So here we have seen just everything's in the controller. But ideally, in the typical application, people avoid writing the code into controller. So let's have a slight discussion with that part also. So when you say about web application development, the flow is something like this. You have a UI, you have a controller, you have a service, you have a DAO, and you have a database. So I will give some name also. So here is your client, which is the flow is coming to UI. Then you have a controller. Then you have a service. Then you have a DAO. And finally, you have a database. And how the typical flow is, you know that, right? From client, request is coming to UI. Then it is coming to controller. Then service. Then DAO and database. Finally, the response is going back in the same direction. Okay, but I designed this diagram. You must be familiar, and you are knowing that all these things very, very popular. In your experience, you have seen many applications like this. So whenever you have designed controller, service, and DAO, this application is known as three-tier application. So this is known as three-tier. If you don't have the DAO layer, or if you don't have the service layer, then it is a two-tier if you are missing any of this layer. And some application you also have seen where mandatorily we don't have the service layer. But my question is to you, do you know the reason why they have service layer? What kind of code should go under service? What kind of code should go in controller? What kind of code should go in the DAO layer? Hemant, any input from your side?
So, service layer, multiple controllers can come into one service layer, and service layer can combine data from different DAO methods and process the response and send back to the controller. So we can modularize the calls in DAO, database calls in DAO, and you can process them in the service layer and send back.
Okay,
Correct.
yeah, makes sense. So we want to modelize our application so that the maintenance, the reusability, and the debugging becomes easy. So these are the main goal behind this architecture. And correct. But there's one more reason behind this. This service layer can be written in a generic enough. So it's not only the particular application. If somebody wants to use this particular service layer standalone into their different application, they can use that. So the specification or guidelines is saying whatever web related components are there, like your HTTP request, HTTP sessions, login, logout kinds of things. All these things should go under this controller because this controller is related to your web applications, which is holding the HTTP request and HTTP response. This service layer should be purely Java code. Whatever your business logic is there for loop, if conditions, some sort of algorithm, whatever you have written, that should be under this service layer. And whatever you are having the database related code like query execution, all these things, that should be inside your DAO layer, right? Now, you can easily make a jar of this service layer. If somebody wants to expose this service as a jar or as a library, they can easily do that. But if you messed up the code, let's say I have seen the people writing a code, they are passing the HTTP servlet request and response to the service layer and doing some sort of job there. Have you noticed that? Anytime people are passing the request and response object to the service layer and asking a fetch the all data of get parameter, all these things, and then proceed further. Trust
Right,
me,
right.
that is bad coding. The moment you have messed up the web component into a service layer, you have added the complexity there. And the moment the any web components came, if you want to make whole these stubs in a one package, that's called WAR file, web archive. So the moment you messed up these things, then it will be very difficult. You have messed up the web components into the library and it becomes now WAR. So idea is we have to maintain a jar, which is a library, especially for service layer, because service layer is the one which is the backbone, or I can say heart of your application. So remember, this architecture is important. And I feel this is the best architecture people have to follow with the three-tier. So here in the example which I'm showing you, I have did everything like repository also I have here only. I might be having some sort of business logic, these things and all. That is also the in the controller. So it's not a good practice. So now we're going to see the one example where we will be having the service layer, DAO layer, controller layer, all the things with the database communication. We will also noticing how the database connection is going to be taken place in the world of Spring Boot. Yeah, so these all things we will be talking in some time. But before that, I want to talk a bit more about in-memory database. Have you heard about in-memory database?
Yeah, H2.
H2, correct. So meaning of in-memory is that till now your application is running, your database will be available. In fact, it will be accessible also with some sort of configuration change, and it is not basically persisting your data. So if you follow the ACID properties of database, where the last is durability, and durability talks about even though the source system is died or failed, the data which is persisted into the database will be available to use. So that's the idea. So in memory is not following the completely ACID properties, and H2 is one of the in memory database, and that in memory database is one of the relational database management system. Okay,
So
so
we can use H2 smaller applications which has no huge data.
mm, this question I can say, rather than if you don't have a need of persisting the data, you can use H2. So I have seen S2 database is used in the case of testing people, or if you have to maintain some sort of cache, you know. So let's say with your application, you are doing lots of static file loading, and then you are processing that. So people used to have a in-memory map or something. So instead of loading the huge data which you required only for your runtime processing, that doesn't mean for persisting or somewhere. It might be sitting into your JSON file, or it might be sitting into your CSV file. So instead of going and hitting the files again and again, as you know that it's an input output operation, right? So when you are loading, reading from the file or writing something into the file, that is kinds of input output operation, and people avoid doing that frequently. But let's say for one of my business need, I remember I'm using the H2 for the processing, where we have a lots of configuration in my JSON file. So this JSON file is, I don't want to go and again load this JSON file again and again. Rather than, while starting this application, I'm reading the all data of my JSON object and putting into the H2 database. And entire application, I'm using the H2 database for my further operations. So these kinds of things, or this kinds of business need, can be fulfilled by H2. I might be having a two option. I can use some map, right? So instead of H2 database, I can use a map to store this data. But I'm not doing that because of the performance and because of the maintenance issue. So you got it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are looking for, so I'm finding the first we will be seeing the some sort of JDBC kinds of application. I think this one. Let me close all. Okay. So you need to understand two things. Spring Boot is providing you two kinds of repository. One is the CRUD repository, and another one is a JPA repository. In fact, I can say three repository. One is a MongoDB repository also. So lots of advantages we are gonna get from the Spring Boot JPA. So CRUD repository, JPA repository, and MongoDB repository. We're gonna learn all these three things under this course. So let's talk about first CRUD repository. So when you want to use the JDBC kinds of stuffs in your Spring Boot application, then you need a CRUD repository. This CRUD repository is providing with the all basic functionality like get, save, delete, update. All these methods you can achieve from this CRUD repository. JPA repository is especially for the Hibernate kinds of implementation framework. So there you are dealing with the ORM based way. So let's talk about first CRUD repository. So I talked about it is enables the repository supports by default. The moment you have this enabled in your application, if you add the pom.xml file with this JPA repository, it is going to become by default. It is providing you the generic operations. Yes, you can save any kinds of data, you can get any kinds of data you can find, and it is an interface, and their implementation is been also provided by the Spring Boot people. So mostly if you seen that when we talk about the framework, when we want to develop a generic framework, the idea is code for interface. So we are defining the interface, then we are saying, okay, so the our consumers or our user of this framework is going to write their own implementation. But for this CRUD operations, they are providing the high level generic implementation also. So the user have to just call that save method, which is already implemented in the library. For example, so if you want to save a person object, what kind of business logic you need here? Pretty simple, right? You have an object and you want to save it. That's all. So for that purpose, user have to write their own save method, then they have to call the data source, then they have to get the connection, then after they have to call the save method. So that is kinds of tedious work. So what they did, they have given the high level implementation to you. So they're saying just call the save method, that's all. Your object will be saved. So that's the reason it is providing you the implementation also. And the beauty is that Spring Boot is going to detect it automatically. The smartness and intelligence of Spring Boot is starting from the class path I talked about in the beginning itself. So if it is found any libraries has been added into my class path, then whatever beans, whatever configuration is need for that libraries, it is going to do automatically. Okay. So with that, let me show you the code. So here also I'm not maintaining the 3-tier architecture. So just understand the concept of CRUD repository. Later we can think about that. Okay. So here starting from pom.xml file first. So on the top of everything, Spring Boot parent, all these things, web, Plana, Dimka, what I have added is additional library called data JPA. Data JPA is the plugins or dependency which is going to give you the all sort of libraries related to your CRUD repository. I have also added the H2 database related dependency, which is a in-memory database that you know already. Other than that, nothing is there. If you found some set of libraries which might be for our web application, I change this application into web application. But if it is a completely controller, I mean REST controller, only the Spring Boot starter, web, MVC, and data JPA. So application.properties is again having this sort of information. You can ignore it for a time being. You just notice what I have given is server port. That's all. Now, one more configuration we have to notice is spring.h2.console.enable equal to true. So while running this application, if you want to see, if you want to query your table directly, then you need a H2 UI, which you can access. So if you want to do that, you just put this enabled equal to true. The moment you will put spring.h2.enable equal to true, then it will be allowing you to access the UI of H2 database. Also, if you want to see all possible configurations of Spring Boot, then you can go to this URL. So Spring. Hello, Hemant, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the common application.properties. So you must bookmark this. So look at this, the whole properties, I mean configuration related keys, what and all you can do with this, it is available, and I think it's very useful. You can look into that. So I have provided this in my Git application already, so you can figure it out from there. So if you want something related to H2, we have talked about just now, right? So see, it is saying whether to enable the console or not. So it is having, and related to H2 also there's a lots of things. You can figure it out there. So in my configuration, what I did, I just added the H2 database dependency in my form.xml file. That's all, which is highly sufficient to set up the H2 related configuration for my application. And to access that H2, I have given this configuration. Now, I have a person.java, which is at the rate of entity, having the table associated with that, all these things, full Java name, blah, 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 all these things, entity and all. We have a controller. This controller is having the dependency of person DAO. Again, I'm missing the service layer here, but that's okay. And remember, this is a controller. So at the end, I'm expecting the data should be in a modal and view both way. But typically, when you are developing a RESTful application, you know that this controller is nothing but it's a REST controller. And you don't need to do this all modal and view. But you should also know that how we can achieve MVC complete structure in the Spring Boot. Many people are having the confusion that Spring Boot is not providing the MVC support. It is purely for REST controller, but nothing like that. You can achieve that also with the help of Spring Boot application. So what I'm doing here basically, I'm setting some sort of view, which is my welcome page, sitting into this web app folder, JSP. At the welcome page, I'm sending some data. Then I'm hitting the database to get the all person database record, iterating that person object, adding into the list of persons object, finally converting into the JSON object and sending this as a part of modal and view. So if you work in the MVC, I think this code will be very simpler to you. Modal and view. Modal stands for data, view it stands for data, HTML, JSP, whatever you are using. Okay, so pretty simple. We are setting a view, fetching the data from the person table, and then after iterating through, preparing the JSON object, and finally sending the JSON object to consumer. I also have some sort of another method called getName. Again, request mapping. If you not provide a method type here, it is going to be directly the get. Here also it is directly get, but the work I'm doing is a create. This is again a bad designing, bad specification. You should provide the method type, but since you have given the endpoints exposed, people are going to hit the endpoints directly. So in that case, it is again safer to create an object. And when you are creating an object, what you are doing, you are putting into the map. Where is the map? Okay, so I'm doing the some sort of map and returning the person object. So there is no database operation required. You can, okay, I given it intentionally to complete this work. Similarly, you have a delete person, and under that I'm calling the find all method, iterating through that person. When I got that object, I am adding into the person's object and deleting that record also. You can see that. Well, the interesting point which I want to show you here is I have a person DAO. Look at this person DAO. Person DAO is having the extent with CRUD repository. So this CRUD repository is just supporting the basic CRUD operations. Under that, if you have noticed from my welcome controller, I am calling the find all method. Find all method. Can you see that? If you go to the person DAO, this guy is not holding the find all method. Then from where it is coming? Because this guy has already implemented that also. If you go to their implementation, look at this. This is the implementation of your find all method. So all the basic operations are going to be taken care by the CRUD repository. But if you want to do some more custom execution, like somebody is having the join query, somebody is having the some complex query to execute, So in that case, you have to write your own implementation of this person DAO also. So this is important. Find by full name like. So this is just a declaration. I feel you have to write the implementation for this. One more interesting point. What I want is the moment this application is coming, I want to execute some sort of business logic. So in a web application like Servlet and JSP, you must have heard about the listener. So we have application context listener, we have a HTTP servlet request listener, we have a session listener, all these things, right? So we have some sort of implementation in Spring Boot also that is called application runner. So if you want to execute some sort of execution, some sort of business logic while starting your application itself, then you need this class. So in this class, my intention is to create some dummy record in my database. So what I'm doing here, I'm just creating a person object, and calling the save method of person DAO class. Person DAO class is not having directly the save method. It is coming from the CRUD repository. So these execution is going to be taken place when your application is starting itself. Okay. So that's the reason I have a data init class, which is internally implementing the application runner, holding the person DAO object, and based upon that, it is calling the complete records. I mean creating the records in the database. Coming to web application is pretty simple. It is a part of web application. So I told you, if you are looking for var rather than jar, then you have to do some set of changes in this Spring Boot web application. Extend it with the Spring Boot servlet initializer, then override this configure method and do this. That's all. You don't need to do anything extra than this. This configure method have to be overridden and extend the servlet initializer class. With that, looks like we are okay to move with this application. I also want to show you one more thing. Spring Boot is coming with a lots of basic and infra related stuffs. Among them, one basic needs is for logging mechanism. So Spring Boot is having their own built-in library for log4j and slf4j. So if you want that whatever log Spring Boot is generating, you want to capture it into your log file, then that's all. What you need to do is you just need to give a log file name, logging.file, and whatever log file you want. That's all. You don't need to do anything extra than this. Once Spring Boot found this user has given their own log file, then the log will be start generating into your additional file. It will create a log file.log, and then it will be start dumping the all records there. But yes, in the production, this is not the right way. In production, you need a lot of configuration related to log, like rollback mechanism. You want the control of log labels like warning, info, debug. So by the way, warning you can do here itself. So how we can do that? Go to the page which I saw on you. Log label will be somewhere. So yeah, can you see that log label? So here, if you want to ask Spring Boot that you just look debug, you can maintain that also. So that is possible. So yes, this I want to show you, because in this case, you will also noticing that log file.log is going to be generated. I'm deleting this file so that you will be making sure that new log file is going to be created. With that, I'm running my Spring Boot application. Right click. What is my port here? 8090. Okay, fine. Right click, run as Java application. Okay, so everything is very familiar to you. The only thing you have to notice is two records inserted, and this happened because in data init I have implemented the application runner, and this guy is printing with this message. You also able to notice that log file.log is created, and here is the all logs which you are able to see in the console into this also. So this is a pretty simple configuration. Now, so my application is running. I want to get a home page, and for home page you just need to put slash. So go to your browser. This time you don't need to go for what I can say Postman. It is a web application. So localhost 8090. Cool. So you can see that the first page, which is a welcome.jsp, is coming in front of you. And if you want to see the welcome.jsp, look at this. I have some set of coding related to CSS, Bootstrap, all these things. And finally, whatever list I'm sending, I'm iterating with the help of JSTL. So in JSP, there is a tag library called, what is that? Java JSP tag library. So we are using that, which is having these all for each, if condition, all these things. If you work in the JSP side, you might be getting it in proper way. So this guy is going to give you this completely Spring Boot messages along with data and view MVC. So this is home, this is create. If you create it, this guy is going to bring you the another page. So look at the code. So the moment you have hit on create, so welcome.jsp is saying create. So the moment you are saying create, the welcome controller, this method is going to hit create method, which is returning you the person.jsp along with the empty object of person. So person.jsp is here, which is basically full name and date of birth, and finally it is asking you to submit that. If you submit it, now it is going for the add method. What add method is doing? Where are you? Add method. Tick, 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 tick. Yeah, here is the add method. This guy is doing the old way of mapping the object, getting the full name, printing, and saving it all. So you go through this piece of code. If you found any difficulties, let me know. I will be discussing on that. So let's create some record. What is the date of birth? I think I have given some sort of a string only, but I still maintain the, yes, the new record has been created. Similarly, you have a delete, give ID, one ID is deleted. So it is completely functioning. And I also want to show you the H2 database. So in the node.txt, I have given how to access this. So whatever port you have used, same port, go to your browser, hit it, connect it. Person, not this. I think, yes, I made it mistake. Hold on. So this is my persistent H2 database, which I have installed in my system. So H2 is not only the in memory. Remember, it is also providing you the persistent kinds of things. Yes, this is the Spring Boot wala.